Well, here we are in July, and it has been a while since I have updated anyone on the status of my homebrew campaign, or since I've uploaded a video. So let me just rip the band-aid off and get to it. This is a no-frills video, so apologies if you're looking for some high-tech stuff. This ain't gonna happen. I just gotta get going again, get back in the groove. So great news is we've been playing in person, which is, man, I know there's pros and cons out there. Lots of people don't have a choice but to play virtual. We're all vaccinated, the whole group, and one of the first things we did, and we waited till the last person was 2 weeks, just per the guidelines, and we decided we were going to get together in person again. And just with the way our group dynamic is, it just makes a huge difference. So I apologize to those folks who are tuned in to the Zoom sessions, and we're probably going to just have to do sort of updates like this going forward because I can't quite figure out how to set up cameras and things for our home table. So hope that's okay. I'll just give you a quick catch up on where we're at. So I think the last Zoom session, the folks in the party had finally left the Harpshield Castle dungeon. And in our first in-person session, give me 1 second, I'll show it to you. So in our first, I don't know if I'll be able to do this, editing. Oh, I'll find out. Our first in-person session was this guy. Met them. This is a Banderhob. I believe he's in Volo's Guide to Monsters, if I'm not mistaken. I'll verify that. And so a couple things have happened. They beat this guy. They had met Elzabar, who was another cleric. Basically what they've decided to do is start heading back west, back towards Waterdeep. It was a very confusing set of facts that they were getting because Elzabar had kind of been told, I guess, or through his prayerful seeking to head west, whereas, of course, the Church of Selûne in Waterdeep had told our adventurers to head east, and their paths crossed. And then something doesn't quite lining up, and so the guys were like, wait a minute, something's fishy with the Church of Selûne. So they're heading back to Waterdeep, which means that they're doing some wilderness adventuring. And I, in the meantime, have gotten some new inspiration. Since they're doing wilderness adventuring, I found this old guy from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the Wilderness Survival Guide. And I have found this old guy, not mine. I don't know where my old books are. It's one of the few regrets in my life that I somehow managed to lose track of where those old advanced D&D books were, but I'm slowly starting to kind of recollect, just more for inspiration, obviously, than I'm not a collector per se, obviously, just inspiration. So I'm really trying to dial into wilderness exploration a little bit more, and so the guys are heading back. They're on a river. They could think it might still be the Ardeep River. They're not quite sure. They didn't spend a ton of time there when they were heading east into the forest, the Ardeep Forest. But in the very last episode, and I'll tell you this and kind of leave this with you as the cliffhanger, I started rolling some random generators, and I just had jotted down a note of like a 1d6 note, and I think 6 was the party comes across a kind of an insurmountable obstacle, like a chasm or something like that, big canyon, something that they can't easily physically traverse. Well, they happen to have been on a raft. And so the raft, I'm like, what's the river equivalent of that? I got it. So they were kind of floating down the river. They had, I think Harlan had cast Leomed's tiny, sorry to butcher your name there, Leo. Tiny hut on the raft itself. So they had this dome, just fit on the 10 by 10 raft, and there was two of the players were trying to take a long rest. One was up front, keeping watch, and what he basically did was he heard the waterfall before he could see it because it was dark. And then there was just this big panic where, oh my gosh, the roar, what do we do? They're digging in their poles into the ground, and trying to get purchase under the river surface, to sort of stop it. Gimner dove out and started swimming towards the kind of like a current, what's it called, a riptide swim towards the bank with a rope. And he rolled like a 2 on a strength check, and so he couldn't do anything. And so then Taz, the barbarian, just leapt off the raft, and he's got a swim speed almost as fast as Gimner, and he just scoops up the little frog fellow, little grung like a football, American football, and just charges up onto the bank. They wrap the rope around the tree. Meanwhile, Harlan and Elisar are on the raft. Just their sticks are sort of giving way because the current's getting strong, pushing the raft towards the edge of the waterfall. And as it sort of breaks loose, the raft just does one of these right to the edge of the falls as they kind of catch it and start to pull it back in. And then they sort of manage to get the raft up and off of, kind of onto the shore, onto the bank. And that's where we left it. So that was the last episode. So I had to take my headset off. It kind of bothers me and makes some weird noises sometimes. But anyways, back to closing out the last episode. They are now sort of encamped on the bank of this river. For the next episode, they're going to still have to figure out how to get past this waterfall. So they're going to have to spend some time thinking about ways around it, if there's even going to be an option to portage their raft, if they're going to have to let it go over and see what lands on the other side, if there's anything to salvage, how are they going to get over, can they get down the mountainside, for example. So all that stuff happens in next week's episode. We've taken a few weeks off. We've also done a lot of that throughout the summer, so there's been some chunks of time where we just haven't been able to play. So you haven't missed a ton. Let's put it that way. You haven't missed a ton, but you're caught up now. And I'm going to spend a few minutes here talking about some of those old books. So I do want to do some more videos here in the near future on some of this old content, this notion of OSR. I know it's sort of a deep cut in the D&D world, old school Renaissance, old school revival, depending on where you're from, maybe. But I think there's some cool stuff in there to mine. And, when Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson were creating these games, they came up with some really cool randomized mechanics that really inject some flavor into the game. So it's all about using it as a spice, right? With that being said, I plan on doing quite a few videos on these topics of where to get inspiration, reaching back into old material, looking at other areas to sort of pull in ideas for your campaigns, books, maybe movies, maybe short stories, whatever the case may be, other videos, other great YouTube content. There's tons of stuff out there, and I'm just having a blast finding it, dipping back into it again. I can't tell you, I already spent so much time just revisiting the Dungeon Master's Guide from Advanced D&D. It just, number one, it brought me back to 1983, probably, when I was playing that edition. It was a mind warp. It was a trip. And then I'm looking at these tables going, how in the world did any middle schooler understand all this stuff? And I think there probably was a lot of that, kind of reading the rules however it felt right for the time. But now in hindsight, decades later, I can look at some of those same random tables and go, wow, what a cool idea. You know, just reaction roles and things like that just seems so interesting. Like, it's not always about combat, combat, combat. Maybe these animals are full. I just saw a video yesterday of a bear, female mama bear, and her cubs wading into the water at Lake Tahoe, surrounded by swimmers, just to cool off. You know, there's no combat encounter there. They just went for a swim, surrounded by people. I mean, that can't happen. Not every owl bear is going to be an attack, right? So I just thought, what an interesting idea. And that's all in there. They kind of thought through that back in the 70s when they were putting this together. So I think there's a lot there. I'm looking forward to digging into it. I'm going to test a little bit with my current campaign. You know, making sure that everybody's kind of on board with it, obviously. I don't want to just change the rules in midstream. But, you know, I could not, like I said earlier, it's a spice, right? And sometimes you can overdo it. Sometimes it's too bland. I think there's going to be a Goldilocks blend in there somewhere. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. And looking forward to keeping you guys updated and putting out some new stuff for everybody. Leave me comments below for things you want me to talk about, for ideas you want me to visit, kind of, you know, talk through any other, you know, reviews and things like that. There are some other sort of questions and comments that have been hanging out there for a while. I'll go back and revisit those and try to make videos on those. Please subscribe to the videos, subscribe to the channel. There's a bell you can ring, apparently, that lets you know when I post content. The bell's not going to be ringing off the hook necessarily yet, but that's okay, right? We're getting back in the groove. The Band-Aid is off, and welcome back.